This is Waltz of the Agonizing Ones Part 2 by Scare in a Box from the creepypasta subreddit. This is not allowed, I'm afraid. Exceptions have been made, negotiations have been taking place since the dawn of civilization. We too have to make them. As doctors, we must listen to me, please. The nurse checked the stopwatch, although her face was nonchalant, her eyes widened slightly as she acknowledged the measly amount of time the old man had left. State your last wish, she said finally. Whatever feeble life is left in me, whatever light still burns inside my living chest, transfer it to this dying boy. Let him have another chance. Dad, no, Andrew cried, shaking his father by the shoulders. You can't do this. You don't know what you're saying. The professor could not bring himself to look at him, staring instead at the nurse through eyes welled with hot tears. I'd like to make a confession, the professor said firmly as his son, Tanya, and Dr. Ellis watched silently, holding the limp body of Marcus. I've lived for long enough with a nasty little secret that's about time that I let it be known to my son. What are you saying, Dad? Andrew stepped back, confused. Look at my body. Look at the others' bodies. See the difference? The professor smiled sadly. The state of me is an absolute mess. It's because of my own sins. I must wash them away before I turn to the cosmos. Make your confession. The nurse stuffed the stopwatch away. The professor turned to Andrew and cupped his face, a tear running down his cheek. I loved your mother very much. She was to me what the moon is to the sky. When you were born, she was elevated. She adored you endlessly. But there was love lacking in her life. There wasn't there for her. She was all alone, raising you while I hustled and earned money to be able to afford the life I wanted us to live. By the time I got there, she had dived into the harsh depths of loneliness. How much could a human mind bear? It was just her doing chores all day long. I had failed to be there for her. As time passed, she fell deeper into the void she had entered. Ultimately, she broke down completely, and I was still in the illusion of my youth. Pride made me see her away, deeming her incapable of being with me and my son. She stayed at a psychiatric institution for many years, until your 16th birthday, actually, before finally passing away. She spent all those years alone, in utter confusion about what was happening, calling out my name and asking where her son was. I could not visit her more than twice. I used to tell myself that I was too busy, but the truth was, my guilt slowly gnawed at me, eating me up from within like a festering wound. The truth is, the man lying on the bed is my truest face, my realest condition. I'm not nothing but a sad mess of flesh living in misery. Andrew stared at his dad in horror. His jaw hung down as he tried to process all the information he'd just been told. But you told me she passed away in a car accident. You've been lying to me my entire life? The professor looked down, clearly ashamed. What are we if not a tangle of pathetic mistakes? Time's up. The nurse appeared from the bed, interrupting the professor. Stop! No, don't do it, Dad! You're so selfish. You left Mom and now you want to leave me forever, too? How can you be this cruel? You don't need me, son. All parents let go of their children's hands one day. For us, the day's today. I mean, look at me. I'm a tragedy. Let me reunite with your mother so I can beg at her feet for forgiveness. My whole life has been lived in guilt. Set me free. I'm removing the intubation, Dr. Ellis called from the bed, holding the tube gingerly as it blew measly quantities of air into the professor's lungs. It was a painful sight indeed. Don't you dare do it, Ellis, Andrew thundered, his voice edging dangerously. Free me. The professor closed his eyes. Andrew scampered towards Ellis, yelling and threatening to hurt her if she unplugged the decomposing body lying helplessly in the bed. Get away from that plug or I'll rip you apart. I don't care if you're my boss or whatever. This is not your decision to make. The decision has already been made. I respect it. Goodbye, Professor. It's been a pleasure working with you. See you on the other side. Bidding him farewell, Dr. Ellis pulled the tube and shut off the life support. Andrew let out a menacing scream as the life support machine died down. You filthy sadist! I'm going to destroy you. Quiet! The professor's nurse yelled dominantly. She glared at Andrew for a second before slowly heading towards Marcus's bed, where the latter lay lifelessly with his arms limp and his eyes turned back into his head. She fished out the professor's stopwatch in her pocket and handed it to Marcus's nurse. Casca morter millis, one said to the other, closing her eyes and pressing the stopwatch to her palm. What the hell are you doing? What are you saying? Andrew screamed, the corners of his mouth frothing up. His emotional situation seemed to be deteriorating rapidly as he found it particularly difficult to accept everything his father had told him, only to die soon thereafter. Stay put, the professor's nurse said, placing the body of the real professor alongside the decaying mass of flesh on the bed. With the help of Dr. Ellis, your time will come too. As the nurse wheeled the professor out to be mixed with the stardust of the cosmos, Andrew sat down against the wall, thinking deeply about everything that had just happened. His eyes darted here and there, unable to accept the truth. He hated everything that happened. He resented his father for lying to him. He resented him for leaving so easily. But most of all, he hated Ellis. A voice echoed through the room. The limp body of Marcus weakly stirred around, struggling to get up. He was very much alive, very much breathing, at all the costs of the professor's life and sins. A bout of nausea took over him for being dead for quite a few minutes, and the young man retched all over the floor, retching his guts out. Marcus! Tanya leaped to her feet, rubbing his back and helping him breathe properly. Oh goodness, he's breathing, Dr. Ellis. Put his face downwards. Don't let anything aspirate into his lungs, Tanya. You're okay, Marcus. You're okay. I'll get you water, okay? Just relax. Take a deep breath. Tanya turned Marcus onto his stomach and got up, rushed outside to get a bottle of water from the vending machine. Dr. Ellis scampered towards Marcus, cooing at him and whispering words of encouragement to the young doctor. Andrew Robertson watched his mentor and his best friend listen to each other as he sat all alone in the corner of the room, his back against the wall. A seething anger was beginning to flame up somewhere deep inside him, in the embers that had already been rooted in his heart. He reminisced how easily Dr. Ellis had pulled the plug away without the slightest hesitation, as if his father was nothing more than a mere disposable life, whereas in reality, he was the one who had built the entire hospital. Without him, Dr. Ellis would be begging around the other hospitals at this age. After doing the heinous deed that she did, not a single apology came from her. No, nothing at all. As if Andrew just didn't exist. Andrew got up, every single cell in his body loathing him for what he's about to do. Some hatred was too much to measure, and the anger in him had developed for too long, too quietly. It could not be extinguished. He remembered his mother, his smiling mother, and his heart screamed silently at how she endured so many years at a mental institution, waiting in desperation for someone to rescue her, all the while her son, oblivious to his mother being alive, roamed around without a care in the world. All that pent-up anger seemed to be targeted at one person, Dr. Ellis. He couldn't get the image of her out of his head, the nonchalance at which she had carried out the deed. His father wasn't there anymore to get the hit of his anger. He had left him like a selfish person, unwilling to converse with his son about the sins he had done. He turned to the crash cart, the lower stores filled with packaged and sterilized surgical equipment. In the harsh light of the ER, a brand new scalpel glistened provocatively at him, begging him to do the unthinkable. He picked it up and tore off the package. Here, have some water, Tanya said, giving the bottle to Marcus. Dr. Ellis had her back turned to Andrew, oblivious to what was about to happen. Hey, Doc, Andrew sneered, raging, his face curled into a snarl. Dr. Ellis turned around and looked at Andrew, who glared down at her. How small and insignificant she looked. How ugly the glint of pride in her eye was. Andrew imagined someone exactly like Dr. Ellis pinning his mother down when she must have acted out in despair and confusion. Andrew, what are you... The blade worked faster than Dr. Ellis could finish her sentence. There was a sharp slick of beads of blood in a straight line appearing across Dr. Ellis's neck. As she moved her head, a stream of blood began to pour down, staining her scrub scarlet. Andrew, what have you done? Tanya screamed, pressing against Dr. Ellis's neck, trying to stop the bleeding. Marcus looked at the scene through bloodshot eyes in confusion, unable to understand what was going on. He finally put two and two together, looking at his best friend in shock and disgust. Why? He asked, looking at the boy he'd known since kindergarten. Wondered when he died and this one had taken his place. Andrew was unrecognizable. Dr. Ellis, Doc, please stay with me. I'm going to do something, okay? Tanya got up and opened the cabinets in the ER, searching for stitches. What she didn't know was Andrew had sliced deeply with the intention to kill her. Her windpipe was cut clearly in half, and no amount of stitching would fix that. The stopwatch held in the nurse's hand quickened up, speeding dangerously as the ticks blurred together. As they hit Tanya's ear, she hurried, searching for the material faster, fooling herself with reassurance that she was trying hard, although a feeble little voice in her head told her that Dr. Ellis was already gone. Andrew, don't do anything stupid now, Marcus croaked weakly. He dragged himself across the floor to where his best friend sat in despair, looking at what he'd done. A moment of clarity had passed through Andrew's mind. He looked at Dr. Ellis's betrayed eyes that stared at him with a mixture of fear and pain, not understanding how the saver of lives had turned into this taker of one. As Tanya opened the glass cabinets, Andrew looked at himself in the reflection. He was unrecognizable. His face was twisted into a wild snarl, his angry eyes full of tears. His peers stared at him with disgust and horror on their faces. He was no longer Andrew Robertson. There was no going back. Unable to live with his mind, Andrew dug the bloody scalpel deep into his wrist, letting the blood pour out. He gasped for a second, shocked at the sight of so much blood pouring out of his body. and hyperventilated soon after. Yet, he knew he had to continue. Through his panic, he forced himself to slash the other arm as well, taking a deep breath and sitting back as he started to feel colder and lonelier, the world around him darkening and getting blurry, feeling his scrubs get wetter as the life poured out of his body. Tick, tock, tick, tock, tick. Not one, but 2 stopwatches stopped ticking abruptly this time, leaving the ER in eerie silence. Marcus's screams were fruitless as Andrew and Dr. Ellis lay on the floor, lifeless. Eyes open, a look of despair on their faces. All was lost. Tanya and Marcus sat in the lobby soon thereafter, looking around at the silent hospital. There's a trail of blood leading out of the ER as the remnants of Dr. Ellis and Andrew were dragged across the lobby towards the entrance by the nurses. It was an eerie sight indeed. Yet even though, with the signs of violence that remained, Tanya felt a wave of calmness wash over her. The cool air blowing out of the AC, the softness of Marcus's face, the presence of not another soul in the realm apart from them both. Tanya relished every bit of it. The slow signs of decay, however, were obvious. No world was permanent, and like all realities, this one was threatening to come to an end. Somewhere in the past hour, bits and pieces of the hospital, the glass panes, some of the sofas in the lobby, the vending machines, had all vacuumed away into the breeze of the cosmos as it whipped past them. "Have you ever heard of the Noodle Man?" Marcus asked her, looking deeply in her eyes as he sat at the entrance, watching the stardust and planets whiz past in the distance. "No," Tanya responded, a dazzling smile on her face. It was a smile that told him all would be good. "Well," he began with his doe eyes twinkling, "there was once a noodle man who sold noodles on the street of his little village. He was really poor, but the highlight of his day was when this one woman who brought his noodles every single morning. She smiled at him, told him his noodles were the best, and thanked him before leaving. Soon, the noodle man started his own business and became quite rich, but his heart yearned for the sight of her once more. Wherever he went, he could not get the thought out of his head, so he returned back to the village to see her one more time. He started selling noodles again at the very same spot for many years, waiting for her to run into him again one day. He could finally tell her that he made it in life, and that he loved her, and that he had come back to get her, so they could be together forever. But alas, it was too late. She was nowhere to be seen. Too many years had passed. He could not find her. The noodle man waited for her until he, too, disappeared from the world. Till his last day he searched for her. Till his last breath he remembered her face. It is said that sometimes when the nights are really quiet, one can hear them laughing in the stars, sharing their love over bowls of noodles. Tanya stared at Marcus, her heart hurting. They'd known each other all their residency, yet none of them had the strength or time to tell the other their real feelings, thinking that they'd do it when the time was right. Here they were now, sitting at the edge of the cosmos, at the end of time, looking at each other, speaking a million words through their eyes, all unsaid. "You should leave now," Marcus said, holding her hand close to his chest. "What? Why? This isn't over yet, Marcus. The test is still going on." Marcus chuckled lightly, noticing 1,000 freckles on her face. They were all beautiful. "Look around you, Tanya. Don't you get it? It's all over. This place is breaking and falling apart." "Yes, and that's great. In a short time, we'll both be leaving," Tanya pleaded in front of him, her heart brimming with love and confusion. "That's not how it works," Marcus said softly, tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear. "There's only one winner. The ticking of only one stopwatch sets us free from the celestial prison." "Then let it be me," Tanya said defiantly, a tear streaking down her cheeks. I can't let you do this, please." "No, it must be me. I must leave now. I can feel my end is near. My clock is running out of all of its talks," Marcus chuckled. Tanya looked at him angrily. "What about the stopwatch the professor gave you, sacrificing his life in the process? You're just going to let that go to waste?" Marcus stared at the lovely little face in front of him, the little brow furrow, the frown of desperation, the eyes that were filled with love for him. He hated himself for waiting till death when he could have done this so much earlier in his life. "It hasn't gone to waste. In fact, I used them better than I used my own time in life. The professor let me have a little extra time with you. I'll always be grateful to him for this." "We don't have to do anything, Marcus. We can both just stay right here and see what happens. Whatever it is, we'll be in it together." "No, Tanya," Marcus said, cupping her face. "I want you to go and live a long and very colorful life. It should be rich and full of laughter. I want you to live it all. We both cannot go. This place will cease to exist only when one stopwatch remains. I've lived long enough, seen enough. I come from a rich family. There's nothing I didn't experience. I want you to live it all too. Somewhere along the line, you will fall in love once more, and it will last you a lifetime." Tanya opened her mouth to reason with him. "Shh," he said, before she could utter a single word. Never forget me. As the hospital slowly started to wither around them, Marcus let go of her hand, walking toward the entrance of the lobby, looking at how beautiful the stars were. He hoped they would lead him to nowhere, or somewhere far away where he could drift soullessly through the cosmos, unaware of his existence. Tanya watched him go from the lobby, her palms flat against the glass walls. She watched him face the curtains of stars whizzing past. Marcus stopped before he could step through, looking back one last time with the brightest smile on his face. I love you. As Tanya whispered the words back to him, Marcus stepped through the veil, letting the chaos embrace him fully as he surrendered himself to it. There's no blood, no violence, no regret. There's no anger or misery. There's only contentment. The minutes dragged by slowly as Tanya felt the breeze sift through her hair. She looked at the empty husk of this reality that lay around her, contemplating how surreal it felt. The empty rooms, the broken ceiling that showed the cosmos beyond, the trails of blood that spoke of misery and pain, they were all around her. A bout of slumber crept into her as pieces of reality around her started to crumble away. Sleep, she told herself. Through her woozy vision, she saw her nurse approaching her and a smile on her face, holding a stopwatch in her hands. The ticking of it echoed throughout the cosmos, deafening, putting Tanya into a sleep-like trance. Soon, there was nothing but darkness. Wake up, Tanya. Wake up. Pain was all she felt. It was agonizing, wave-like and burning right through her. She wanted to drift back to sleep, but her nerves screamed in terror, begging her to see what was destroying her. Wake up, Tanya! A sound, a distant feminine sound, echoed through her mind, coming from a faraway tunnel. With a gasp, she was awake. A sharp light blinded her eyes as she squinted in pain. Every single pore of her body was in discomfort. She could feel nothing but weakness. It was as if she had dried up. Mom, she croaked, the hair on her arm standing up to the sound of her own voice. Why was it so dead and raspy, like the croak of a frog? My lifeline, my darling, my everything, her mom cried, looking at her daughter with love. You're awake, finally. After 5 years, my Tanya's back. That was part 2 of Waltz of the Agonizing Ones by Scare in a Box from the creepypasta subreddit. Thank you again so much for listening, and we'll see you again next time.